Back in the saddle again. Recently returned home from back east for my sister's wedding. I think I did one episode at the airport. But other than that, didn't have a lot of time to record episodes. It's good to actually sit down and record an episode. So saddle up for Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, ballistics, the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. For that first-hand experience I've been blessed to have, check the show notes. Should be some cliff notes, brief synopsis of my bio in there. With that, today's episode came from the patrons. So if you are a patron in any way, shape, or form, I thank you for that. But we're going to be talking about what I'm going to dub 5.56, 223, 308, plus P plus. High pressure loads. High pressure loads for these cartridges. To give credit where it's due, I think it first got brought up in the Patreon, on the Patreon page by Evan. I'm not going to mention his whole name. I don't know if he wants me to, but thank you, Evan. And then also Matthew. I appreciate you guys for bringing this to my attention. Now, we've recently seen the second in the, let's say, Sammy Spec high pressure 80,000 PSI loads. We first saw this, to give credit where it's due, in the 277 Fury, the supposedly new round for the military, which, other than the high pressure, is basically a 308 neck down to 270 or 277 caliber. Big whoop, right? But the thing that makes it a little bit different is they use their bimetal case. The bottom of the case, the part that you generally get issues with really high pressure, is steel, and the top part is brass, and it's amalgamated, vulcanized. I don't know how they do it. They join them together. And this lets them safely load to higher pressures. Historically, a really high pressure round would have been like 65,000 PSI. This bumped it up to 80,000 PSI. That is what makes it furious, the 277 Fury. And it's supposed to give better ballistics out of short barrels. If you look at long-term trends from the turn of the 20th century till today, barrels have consistently been getting shorter and shorter. If you look at like a Mosin Nagant 9130, it's almost comically long how long that gun is compared to like an M4 today. So by loading those higher pressures, you can get higher velocities out of the same barrel length, or respectable velocities out of shorter barrels. You might get, I'm just making up numbers here. Historically, maybe you needed a 20-inch barrel to get numbers that you could now get out of a 16 or 14 5-inch barrel. We saw similar things with the 7mm backcountry. This is, I'm not going to say just uses a steel case. They call it peak alloy. All steel is an alloy. The element, Fe iron, that's the element. They mix it with different stuff to make steel, so all steel is an alloy. But they call it their peak alloy. It's a steel case round that will let you load that one to 80,000 PSI. Well, it didn't take long. I was kind of wondering if this was going to happen. It seems that it already has, and it's been out a little bit now. That they are loading, let's say, legacy cartridges, popular cartridges with the same kind of technology. Maybe not exactly the same, maybe the cases are slightly different. The ones I've seen use the seismic cases, but they use a case that can safely withstand the higher pressures, and they're loading legacy cartridges to higher pressures. The one that I found out about, and the one I'm most interested in, to be honest, is the 5.56 223. Let's dive into Evan's message. I'm not going to read it verbatim, it's not the Bible. I saw something that we talked about in a rifle thread that might be interesting for making an episode. Here you go. Badlands Munitions is making a hybrid 5.56 case that supposedly is going to handle 100,000 psi safely in an M4 60 to 70 grain solid coppers. 60 to 70 grain solid coppers at 3200 out of a 14 5-inch barrel. Stepping out of this message, those are impressive numbers. Historically, when I think of rough numbers in my head, M16, A2, A4, which is what I went to war with, you're looking at those old numbers of like a 55 grain at 3200 out of a 20-inch barrel. This is talking 60 to 70 grains, 3200 out of a 14.5. Would be pretty fantastic and a game changer. I think a 70 grain Barnes triple shock past 3K is going to perform better on game and hunting as well. I'm going to try to get some cases and work up a safe performance load. I've got a few 14.5s to test in. Let me know your thoughts. Alright, well here you go. Here are some thoughts. I don't know if those numbers are legit. You should check this. By the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, a matter is established. I did not see on the manufacturer's own website, I did not see them say they were pushing these to 100K, 100,000 PSI. That's even quite a bit higher than 80,000. Let's go to the website, shall we, for Badlands Munitions. Am I 21? Yes, I certainly am. One load they list out of stock, but is the 5.56 318 NOS 3 62 grain. If you're not familiar with the Mark 318, it's a little bit more obscure military round, U.S. Marine Corps 62 grain. This says it features a 62 grain Barnes OTM 100% copper bullet, and this lists average speed 2690. Okay, that's decent, but out of a 10.3 inch barrel. That is crazy fast for a 10.3 inch barrel. And it lists 3,100 feet a second from a Mark 12. It lists a 70 grain Barnes TSX at 2590 from a 10.3 and 3,000 from a Mark 12. Again, those are impressive numbers. Here are some thoughts on this. A couple of things come to mind, and I don't know if any of these will necessarily be true. These are potential issues. Okay. 5.56 is a fairly high pressure round to start with before all this. I have worn out guns before with standard plain vanilla ammo. You start putting the cherry on top, like with this ammo, what is your throat erosion going to be like? What is your deterioration of accuracy going to be like? What is your gas port erosion going to be like? We've pretty well worked out a lot of the kinks out of the M4, M16 platform over 50, 60, 70 years of use. We know what parts can hold up. We've upgraded certain parts over the years. We pretty much know what size a gas port needs to be in a barrel. We know what length the gas system needs to be, the gas tubes. You start throwing these variables in there, yeah, maybe it gives you these impressive numbers, but at what cost? Is it going to blow out your gas tube after a few rounds of rapid fire? I'm not saying that it will, I'm saying it's a potential. Is it going, I can't see how it wouldn't erode your barrel faster, but how much faster? Are we talking about going from, a chrome line barrel 20,000 rounds to 18,000 rounds? I would say big deal. Are we talking about cutting barrel life in half? Or let's just, if we do it linearly, if we went from 60,000 psi to 100,000 psi, are we talking about cutting your barrel life by almost half, cutting it by 40%? Is that juice worth to squeeze? Are you going to have to do things with buffers, buffer tube weights, things like that? I don't know the answer to these questions, but you are throwing in a variable. And one of the things that's made the AR-15, M16, M4 platform palatable to me more and more over the years is there's so much development, there's so much refining of that system over decades of hard use around the world. We pretty much know how the system works. But you start going off the reservation with the ammo, I don't know. Right? I don't know. Are you going to start... Here's another thing. These are steel cases, I believe. I don't like generally shooting steel cases out of an AR-15. Out of an AK-47, well, those are made from jump to shoot steel. SKSs made from jump to shoot steel ammo. The AR-15 was not. One of the, fragile parts of the system is the extractor. And it doesn't nearly have the case taper that a 7.62x39 does. So dirty chambers, nasty chambers, or just a bad out-of-spec round getting stuck in the chamber can be a big deal. Start messing with those pressures, I don't know. And also the extractor. No newsflash here, but brass is softer than steel. So it stands to reason that a brass case is going to be more gentle on the extractor than a steel case. Steel on brass is going to wear out that steel less than steel on steel. That makes sense. I could be wrong about that, but that just seems like that should be the case. Again, how much are you cutting that down? What are your risks of breaking an extractor and therefore rendering your gun useless for the time being? Even with brass case ammunition, I like to carry a spare extractor in the grip of my AR-15. Extractors break, and they break with regular ammo. With these variables, again, I don't like steel case in guns made for brass case. I don't like shooting steel case out of my 9mm. I don't like shooting steel case out of my AR-15s. They weren't designed with that ammo in mind. Will it work? Yeah, it'll work for a time. It's not my thing. Some people don't mind. But these are steel cases. At least the rims are steel. Also, I really like that idea of a 70 grain Barnes in this kind of weapon. I think it's a great terminal performer. Although it's generally, I've heard from many people, and I have quite a bit of experience with copper bullets, that you are not supposed to go from lead to copper. You are supposed to clean down to bare metal. These rounds are not cheap for many reasons. So if you've ever cleaned your gun down to bare metal on like a hunting rifle, that's a pain. Cleaning a high round count small bore like an AR-15 down to bare metal before switching ammo, that really sounds like a pain. So I don't know how much of switching back and forth of ammo you're going to be doing. It's probably not going to shoot same point of aim, point of impact, because there's just too many variables as what you're practicing with. Even if you were shooting, let's say, a 70 grain solid copper and it shot roughly the same velocity as a 55 grain for practice, I don't know that it's going to shoot anywhere near the same point of aim, point of impact. Totally different, bearing surface, pressures, all kinds of variables in there, right? So even if you could switch, like this was going to be your carry ammo or your truck gun ammo or your whatever ammo, your, patrol rifle ammo, I don't know how much you're going to be able to switch back and forth. And this ammo is expensive. Now, I am not saying this is bad ammo. I think Badlands Munitions probably makes some really good ammo. It's probably, it's the really high-end, high-performance ammo. I'm just saying, don't think that there's just a free lunch. You're just going to throw this in your gun and you just I don't know. I don't play video games, but I'm familiar with the idea of like a cheat code. Don't think that you're going to throw this in. It's just going to be a cheat code and solve all your problems. And turn your, 5.56 into a 308. It's not going to do that. Talking about the 308, they also list a 7.62 by 51 175 grain load with similar technology. It lists 175 grain at 26.75 out of an 18-inch barrel. It's got that similar kind of case look and technology. Now it doesn't, again, I can't see anywhere on the website where it says they load it to 100K or even even 80K, 80,000 PSI or 100,000 PSI. I just don't see that. Now, I am less interested in the 308 in this kind of ammo, and here's why. I like 308. I'm a 308 guy. But I'm much more interested in this kind of ammo in the 223-556 because I've always felt, maybe from the first time I shot an M16, going to war, law enforcement, competition, I've always thought that the 223 lacked performance. It was barely marginal as an intermediate rifle round. I think I've said on this podcast many times in the past. As far as round per round effectiveness goes, I think that 7.62x39 is a better round per round ballistic performer. I'm not saying it's better, period. I'm saying round per round ballistically, I think 7.62x39 is a better round per round cartridge. It also has other detriments, but I've always thought that the 5.56 223 was less than. I've talked about before, if I were in charge of that, I would have bumped it up to a 6x45 and loaded something like a 90 to 100 grain bullet, a little bit better ballistically, without going all the way up to a full-powered rifle cartridge, because I think there is a good place on the modern battlefield for an intermediate rifle cartridge, not going up to a full power. Now, I like a full power, I like a 308, but I've always felt that the 5.56 left a lot to be desired in terminal performance, and we've done a look at all the stuff we've done over the years to try and make it acceptable marginal, from 55 grain M193 to 62 grain M855 to M855A1 to Mark 262, 318, trying to get a better ballistic performer. And we didn't jump through all those hoops with the 30-06 or the 308 because it's good. So for that reason, I think there is some real room to improve the 5.56 223. I've said also many times that the 223, even with really good quality hunting ammo, is absolutely, completely marginal for like whitetail deer, small white. It's completely marginal. Can you kill a deer with it? Yes. Have I taken people hunting and guiding with it? Yes. Is it good? No. It's marginal. This would take a marginal round to make it slightly better for deer. But even with those numbers, you talk about a 70 grain Barnes, which is probably one of the best bullets you're going to get for deer hunting out of that. To give you an idea, one of my favorite deer rounds that a lot of people think is like a baby deer round is the 243. I love the 243 for deer. Just to give you an idea, the just plain kind of vanilla Winchester blue and white box 75 grain lists a velocity of 3375. 75 at 3375. There's a factory Barnes triple shock load of 80 grains at 3350. 80 grains at 3350. This load they list again as a 70 grain TSX, which is a phenomenal load for a 5.56. The numbers are impressive. At 3000. It's a lighter weight bullet going significantly slower. 3,000 and some feet per second slower. And I love the 243, but nobody's accusing it of being a super powerful deer round. It's a good deer round. It doesn't make the 223 a 243. Not even close. The 223 is an intermediate rifle round. The 243 is a full-powered rifle round. It's a neck-down 308. It is not going to turn your 223 to even a 243. It's going to turn it from a lackluster marginal, and I like the 223, but it's a marginal intermediate cartridge to a slightly better intermediate cartridge. Now granted, those 243 velocities are probably out of a bolt action with a longer barrel, but here's the thing. Why are you hunting deer with an AR-15? Hunt them with a proper bolt action, unless you just want to do it. And if you just want to do it, you're not doing it because it's a good deer round. You're doing it because you just want to. But it's not turning your 5.56 into a 243. It's taking a marginal performing intermediate cartridge and making it a better performing intermediate cartridge. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I see a place for that in the 5.56-223 because it is marginal. It's marginal in terms of performance in combat. It's marginal for deer. I don't recommend it. The 308 kind of has the opposite for me. The 308, I love the 308. I have a lot of guns in 308. If I could only have one rifle and you give me no other caveats and you say it has to be a rifle, it has to be, you have to pick one long gun, it has to be a rifle for the apocalypse, and you give me no caveats, I'm going to pick a 308. I love the 308. I think it's more than you probably want for many situations. I think I've said before that I think ballistically, the 7mm 08 or the 6.5, I know the keyboards are going to explode, but the 6.5 Creedmoor are probably better. I like the 308 because it's so common. It's got so many different varieties and flavors as far as tactical rounds and hunting rounds and really good quality ammo at an affordable price. The 308 is a great round. The 7mm 08 is arguably a better round. Why don't I have a bunch of rifles in 7mm 08? Well, one, they don't chamber a SCAR 17, which would probably be my one go-to gun if the peanut butter and chocolate hit the fan. They don't chamber it in a 7mm 08, nor do I want to pay for the ammo to train with it in 7mm 08. You're probably not buying bulk cases of 7mm 08 like you can do with 308. There's not a bunch of Milsurp 7mm 08. Likewise, maybe the second gun I would choose, my Ruger, depending on the scenario, the Ruger Scout Rifle in 308. I don't think they ever made it in 7mm 08. The 308 is a good full-powered rifle cartridge. It's more power than you probably need for most situations. So going more power, like there's a smorgasbord of more powerful rounds than the 308, right? The 30-06. Say what you want, but it is a little bit more powerful than the 308. We didn't go from the 308 to the 30-06. We went from the 30-06 to a 308. The 300 Win Mag, the 300 Remington Ultra Mag, the 300 Winchester Short Mag, Wisdom, and there's a bunch of them. I don't own any of them, nor do I want to own any of them. I've said before, I'm not a big fan of the Magnums. I'm not a big fan of 300 Win Mag. I live in a state where I can routinely hunt elk, and we have, grizzly bear and all, and I don't think I need a 300 Win Mag. I don't want to turn my 308 into a 300 Win Mag. If I wanted that, I'd have a 300 WSM. I don't, and I don't want one. Whereas I think the 223 would generally do better if it was better. It had higher ballistics. I don't think the same about a 308. I think the 308 is fine, and if anything, I would like it a little bit less than, because there's no free lunch. With more velocity, more power, you generally get more recoil if all of the things are equal. And I don't care how good and how big and bad you are and how good you control recoil, if you reduce it, you can shoot faster. Right? So again, I don't think the 308 needs more power. And if you do, then there are a ton of other rounds for that. In fact, I know this is going to make some people mad, and I love the 308, but if the 7mm 08 or the 6.5 Creedmoor was as, and it's getting there, but was as available and everything in all the different configurations as the 308, I would generally gravitate towards that. I think that, let's say 100 to 130-ish grain bullet, at those, good, solid, full-powered rifle cartridges, let's say 25 to 2,800 feet a second, that is just fine for big game. It's just fine terminal performance as far as defense goes. It's more than enough, and the 308 is more than enough for all of that. So I'm not real excited as much about the 308 version of this, but I think that the 5.56 223 does have some real potential And if you're willing to roll the dice on those potential issues, again, that's why it's rolling the dice. I'm not saying that any of those will necessarily happen. Or if you have, it's not your go-to AR and you have a specialty AR that you just want to see how crazy and how good you can get a 5.56 223. And if that's your mission, these really do offer something unique in the world of 223 5.56. Is that juice worth the squeeze? You will have to answer that for your mission parameters. I do like seeing the innovation. I do like seeing things like this. We'll probably see more of it. So those are kind of my thoughts on the 223 and 308 plus P pluses. That's what I'm going to deem them. I appreciate you guys. My tactical tip for today is more of a philosophy. Remember, there is no free lunch. If more power was always better, then we would just send all our infantry troops running into combat with Barrett 50 cals or Dillon miniguns. We don't do that. More is not always better. You get to a tipping point. Firepower versus mobility, recoil, weight of ammo, longevity of firearms, a lot of things. Sometimes more is better. Sometimes more is just a waste. Sometimes more is worse. Think about it like your body. Your body has a fairly narrow optimal weight range. If you go more, heavier than that, it's generally not good. More is not always better. It all depends on the mission, right? If you're sumo wrestling, more is probably better. If you're trying to run a marathon, well, sumo wrestlers don't excel at that. So what are you trying to do? So my thoughts on that. With that, your tactical verse of the day. Talking about running races and fighting. The everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, does not become weary or tired. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives strength to the weary. And to the one who lacks might, he increases power. Though youths grow weary and tired, and vigorous young men stumble badly, yet those who wait for the Lord will gain new strength. They will mount up on wings like eagles. They will run and not get tired. They will walk and not become weary. Amen. I believe in that, men, and I hope that you do too. Thanks, and have a blessed day.